specific about how our company, FizzDapp, and also this mic noise, anybody let me know, I'll turn it off. It's how our company, FizzDapp, became an agile company after having what I like to deem crappy waterfall previously. So yeah, I think go to the next
All right,
slide.
I'm Mike, by the way. I don't know if you guys can read my self-made name tag, but Mike is here. Oh, there we go. There we go. That's what he was in.
Yes, that's what I was asking you to do. Yeah, Mike's our product owner. He actually makes decisions. I'm the support guy. That also just means I'm first line on phones. I'm our sort of outward-facing guy. FizzDapp makes software for paramedic internships. Basically, we track what paramedics, EMTs, and soon-to-be nurses, respiratory therapists do while they're being trained. Basically, a competency-based tracking system. It's super boring. It's basically a front end on a database, but we love our jobs despite the actual content sounding fairly dry. Yeah, but FizzDapp was not always a for-profit company. Next. When we started, we were a grant-funded research project in '97. We basically had a demand for a way to find real information about what medics and EMTs are doing on their internships, and it needed to be tracked. So people got together, submitted a grant proposal, it was funded. Mike Johnson, who was writing C++ for doing weather analysis, learned to program in PHP in 1997, put it out there. It was being used by 15 or 20 customers at the time. Said, okay, cool, 6 months later, that was a great project. Let's go on. The grant expired. They tried to ship the product to other people who might want it. Nobody took it, so Mike said, all right, I guess this is a business now, and started charging customers to use it. We didn't have a team when we started in 2000 as a for-profit business. We had a subject matter expert, the guy who said, here's what paramedics need to do, and Mike Johnson, our developer. That was it. It wasn't a team, we didn't have a designer, it was just some guys. As we grew, there was demand for new products. We basically had crappy methodology developed. A director of technology came on who was actually the cousin of our CEO, and he wrote most of the code while our CEO made most of the support calls, did some of the business development, and basically kept the place afloat. We did grow over time though, because the thing about the EMS community is that if you work with them, they work with you. And we started hiring developers probably in 2002 who weren't Eric, our director of technology, and it was kind of a crap show. We didn't have any structure, any support. We had some developers answering the phones and emails sometimes, and we had no kind of process for how it went. We hire a developer figuring, okay, we're going to give them a project, they'll run with it and do it. We give them some specs and a deadline. That didn't work awesome. We had a bottleneck for a director of technology who was the only person who was empowered to push code. He was also the only person really empowered to make any production changes. So we had to do a bug fix, and this is even up until 2009 when we were hired. It had to go through Eric. And that meant that we had 4 or 5 developers who often sat on their hands because their code couldn't get pushed because Eric was sick, or he was in the middle of a project and he was deadheaded. He just couldn't be bothered on a Friday. What if something breaks? And it meant that our product suffered. This is what our product looked like up until 2011. That's actual tables just generated by HTML. This is code from '97. It was actually 13-year-old code before we started saying, you know what? Maybe that's not what we want. Next one too, this is great. Those are real frames, real authentic, genuine frames. And it meant that behavior was hard to track. It meant that any metrics we tried to put in place for usage failed. It was very difficult for our developers to work within it because, as I said, most of the back-end code was written in '97 by a guy who'd never done web development before. And we just sort of done Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid on top of Band-Aid until we're looking at 13, 14 years later, and this is not working. So our customers love this anyway because of guys like us and the company itself being very responsive. We provided something they needed. They needed to get accredited, which basically means given permission to train paramedics, and they needed to be able to prove that they had the right numbers and that they were doing everything correctly. We provided them a tool to do that so they didn't have stacks of paper on every student, and they loved us for it. And because we had very friendly, responsive support people eventually hired on, they forgave lots of the bugs, lots of the glitches, lots of the ugliness, and the general grind to a halt of our feature creation. Also, should I turn this off? Is this feedback killing anybody? All right, sweet. Just me. So yeah, we had those relationships and we did lean on them for well over a decade. And our developers also got leaned on very heavily. And any developers in the room will tell you that if you need to wait to get code pushed when you are done with a project and you need to wait a week, you're going to get sick of that job real fast. And we always prided ourselves on hiring these people who were really smart, they're go-getters, and they just want to sink their teeth in the project and run with it. And we didn't use them. We didn't give them a situation where they felt they were invested or could grow. Again, we had crappy waterfall. It wasn't even a regular waterfall methodology where at least there's structure you can look to a spec. We had sort of haphazard specs being carried down. Basically, we ran like a bunch of paramedics writing software, not like a software development house writing software for paramedics. So, yeah, that's that. But we do love our developers. Mike and I started as support people, and one of the few things we were told by Louise, who was at the time our mentor, was that we have to protect the developers. We don't bring them really crazy requests from customers. We find a way to get a good request into them so that it can get fixed. We're there to shield them from any of the chaos that might be happening because of the kind of lack of change in the code. We need to protect them, though, not just from the customers and crazy requests, but from a management style that kind of sucked. And we did realize we loved our customers too. You saw what that web page looked like. And now think about, 2010. You're a 19-year-old new paramedic student. You've been using Facebook and Twitter and great web apps. Some better designed than others, but things that are functional. And then when you go to school, they're telling you to use what I had put up on the screen before. That's a little ridiculous. It feels disrespectful. We'd always been able to work with the educators because our reporting was so good, but now what we had to look at was how do we make every customer we have feel like they're having a good experience with this, that have them feel that that support was reaching out to them. And so we use what Steve Blank calls the customer development methodology, which is basically finding a customer outside of your company, finding answers outside of your company, and bringing that information back to iterate, and then presenting it to customers again, and iterating until you get it right in a way that customers will be excited for and will, of course, pay for. So we did what you're not supposed to do, and I don't recommend this. I want to kind of put this as a disclaimer. This is not saying everyone should do what we do. Really, the way our teams are set up is what I want to talk to you about. But what we did was we said, all right, we've got 3 years. 100% of our code is going to be new code in 3 years. We're going to toss out the junk that made programmers not want to work here. We're going to think with user-centered design on every decision we make, and we're going to find a way to make it so that customers, be they educators or students, love us. I really mean 100%. We're a year ahead of schedule on this, and I think in 6 months or so, we should be down to 100%. So, again, there's that quote from Steve Blank that I love that probably has a million other iterations, which is there are no answers inside of the building. So we adopted user testing as our philosophy in everything we do. Anytime you make a decision, Mike as a product owner can talk about when doing mock-ups and trying to figure out solutions to really complicated systems. He'll go around the office, he'll go to the local community college, and can you talk a little bit about trying to talk to paramedic students about software?
Well, yeah, you hit really well on the fact that our customers are, at the center of everything that we do. It's a customer-centered design model. We interview our customers about everything that we do, and that really actually had a lot to do with protecting our developers' part too.
But yeah, it's fine. No problem. But the thing is, so we started, all right, we're going to write this new software and it's going to be great, and we're going to check everything with the customers as we make decisions, but the methodology I explained to you doesn't work to do that. You can't be handing down specs and then change them when you get user feedback. So we had to change it to an agile method. We picked Scrum because it was available. We didn't necessarily say this is better than Agile with a capital A. We don't have any negative feelings about any of the others. What we know is that Scrum was easy for us to find classes on, and it provided a tool set that we could break down. Mike is our product owner, or a product owner.
Yeah, we've been using Scrum now for a year and a half, right? Another disclaimer that we didn't mention was that it probably won't work for large companies. You know?
If you have 150 people, we need to talk about a little bit more of what we did and how we can translate. We can do that.
Right.
We're a company of 50.
Yeah, a very small company. So if you're coming to us here from a larger company, perhaps Agile is something you can implement at a smaller team level, not necessarily the big level. But so one thing that we've been doing, one of the fundamental principles of Agile is agility, is iteration, putting something out there and then trying again. So that's really the thing that we've done at every step, even the personnel. So
yeah, Mike started in my role. He was support with me, and he took over his job because we needed a product owner. He got the training, and he went forward with it. It's great to talk about this, but there's a hiccup, is that we already have managers. So we had to do away with that. We flattened our organizational structure, and this is what we mean by 150 people, this is unreasonable. We get that. Team-wise, though, a flat structure with who you have available is what makes Scrum work. It's what makes an agile development team able to function. Our CEO was QA on the skills tracker, right? The software you saw on the screen, the image of that screen. Our CEO had very little to do with it once it was moving. He did QA on it. The person who developed the process was our product owner, was our boss Louise. That was our customer support person. She was hired on to answer the phones. But what we did was we had the team find roles that they could use, find roles that could be used in. And we didn't let one decision, one title, define what you were capable of doing. It also meant that when people are reporting to each other, it's team by team and project by project. So for 6 months out of the year, I could be reporting to Mike with my deliveries. I have content I've written. I'm editing pages to make sure that it's in the fizzed out voice. But then, after that cycle is over, he needs to look to me in order to do implementation. So as we're putting something out, we're releasing the product. Now I'm the product owner on that, and I'm in control of that release. And so there's not a management structure in place. It's based on roles in a team. And the only way that that was possible was by breaking down the existing management structure with a director of technology and a director of support and saying, we're all working on the same project. We need roles, not titles. Our developers actually got excited about this because they were free to push code, which is kind of a corporate requirement. And also, they were able to choose what they were working on. They could say, I can't handle that this week. I'm on 2-3 teams. I can't take a whole crap load of tasks this sprint. But what we found was after they got used to the methodology and they found that they had an investment in being involved, they picked cooler work and, in fact, get involved in all aspects of creating the product. Mike works on a team that's mostly made up of scheduler of the design team that had been kind of created from within the developers. If you can talk about that as they got the design.
I don't really have too much to chat about that.
So the fact that the developers were either Scrum Masters, they're in charge, they're the captains of the team, or product owners involved where they're responsible to the people who make business decisions, which is basically the entire company, means that we get to be proud of work that went out. No, we're going to get this out ahead of schedulers. We want to see a beta user group onboarded. We want to see what they think of it. And so our developers worked hard, worked overtime to get stuff out ahead of schedule. And design, as I was saying, is part of it. It's what we do. It's not part of the process. Our designers don't hand out a wireframe and say, okay, go and run with it, and then check back in when you want to make a decision. Our designers are, every stand-up meeting, right?
Yeah.
Every stand-up, every sprint planning meeting, our designers are involved in. Even if their whole point is just to hear what's going on, The developers can feel like they can check in with somebody who has usability training, somebody who's been formally educated on user testing and design. But the designer or the developers are also empowered to give their own designs and say, UX, can you give this a look? Team, can you give this a look? Everything we do is based on user personas. We know our customers very well. So we don't say, what will a user click on? We've adopted a methodology of saying, what will Casey click on, Casey being a certain kind of educator. And doing that has allowed us to talk really fluidly about these are the really specific use cases and these are generalized use cases. And this is way different than we had before where there was, what did our subject matter expert tell us began. And so that's changed into allowing every member of the team to be able to make crucial decisions without feeling like they were going over anybody's head. And we did a control burn. We didn't scrap everything we had at once. We rewrote our skills tracker in 8 months. We released it to a really, really small group, some of our best, some of our worst customers. But they were all willing. They all signed on and said that they were happy to beta or to test our new software. And we got honest feedback, and we started iterating immediately. Our developer, Sam, who was our lead developer on the project, volunteered to get on the phone with some of these people because he couldn't understand the feedback we were giving them. So he was part of this customer-centered design by finding answers outside of the building on his own accord. That was not told to him by his manager. He just picked up the phone or came to support and said, what's the number? Picked up the phone and called one of our guys in Colorado who was complaining and hammered out new features. As I pushed this out, I had full access to the dev team to request this in our maintenance team. I'm going to replace one at a time. I'm going to release the willing participants. This also became its own marketing campaign because the customers were involved in it. They were excited. They told their friends. They told other users, oh, you've got to see what FizzDev's got coming. Are you still on 1.0? Are you kidding me? Yeah, it's a beta, but they fixed it super quick. And we were getting calls. 2/3 of our customer base has chosen to switch over before we even started making calls telling them that we were going to have a required changeover. We're already in people knocking on our door about your stuff, about scheduling. And we still maintain our growth, but that speaks more to our customers than it does to the release. But it didn't, we didn't have to drop making money in order to make our product better. And yeah, by this time next month, we'll have one feature that has to run on our old code, on our old server, because we've been choosing to burn it down step by step. We've changed hiring and onboarding. If you haven't seen anything Paul DeBettis has said about how to hire developers and hire people for your company, go see the session next. He's great. And then we iterate roles. I'm mostly a support guy. Mike is now almost entirely a product owner. But we try out new things. We have a new hire who's only a month on. She's really good at projects. She's getting product owner training. We're going to try it out. It's not as risky because we know it's temporary. There's a low financial investment. There's a low time investment. Let's try it. Everything we do is iterative, including business choices. Mike derailed our rewriting code project because we had enough requests from a customer saying we need a specific feature. Anyway, so failure for us isn't failure. That's why we say we iterate everything. We're not afraid of giving somebody a chance at a new role, but we also have to be really honest in the company. But is it working? Do you need help or are you bad at this? We don't care if you're bad at it. Find a role you're good at, but don't leave the team hanging. Don't shift the team. And everybody's empowered to have a strategic vision. Every year, well, I guess the past 2 years, but there's a plan to have check-ins every year with what are we doing next year? What can you take on as a team? What does development feel we need to do? What does support feel is needed? How do we make sure that everybody in the company is seeing the same thing? And of course, everything we do is check into customers. Just because we want to do something that we think is neat doesn't mean it's going to sell or serve the people who've been relying on us for over a decade. So they have a voice in that meeting too. So that's our contact info. I'm sure there are plenty of questions.
When you're dealing with customers, and
Yeah.
they're all over the country and stuff.
Yes.
How do you know which ones to talk to? Do you like have a forum where they all call in and all the customers get to share their feedback? Because somebody might, different priorities around features or even click-through
we look at different programs across the country, different schools who are our customers, we can say we need schools who fit variable sizes, so everything from 2-student kind of mom and pop paramedic school to East Texas Medical Center, which is the largest EMS program in the country. And we'll check in with people in various positions in those organizations, and we make sure that we have a geographic, size, and honestly an expertise spread, because technology adoption in our community is not awesome. Very good old boys, very pen and paper. It took a lot of finagling in order to get us into being respected and understood. And so we try to get a good spread of, all right, who doesn't really like using this? Let's talk to them about what this experience is like for them. It means that we're doing interviews all the time, even after we've created spec, to make sure that when we check in, we're not skipping something. And the other thing is that we're going to miss something. That's going to happen, and you need to iterate in order to make sure that when you're getting feedback from the live customers, you're able to implement that quickly. So we make sure we communicate the features and news so that people know that they can hammer on us. What's up?
How do you do with the education and training of the entire team in the Scrum methodology?
We kind of sell people on the idea. That was a big role that Mike and I had.
Yeah. Well, as a small company, we send probably half to some sort of Scrum, either Scrum Master training or product owner training. That was big, and then once you got half the people on board.
Where is a good place for product owners?
The Scrum Alliance. Yeah, I think it's an international organization. That's what we use. Like I said, I have nothing against capital A Agile or any of the other methodologies, but Scrums work for us because we don't do a pure Scrum, because nobody's going to do pure Scrum. And if you try to be prescriptive with an Agile methodology, you're going to fail because you're going to start getting people thinking they're managers instead of team members. But the Scrum Alliance kind of shows you that. I know that your instructor, or no, it was the Suki's instructor, a Scrum Master instructor. Okay. Laughed when someone said, well, at every meeting we have to say, what's in your way? Are you getting everything you need? The idea is that the team needs to feel empowered to say, I need you to finish your code so that I can run mine, so I can run some scripts to get this data imported so I can do what I need to do. And once you get the team sort of invested in, here's why we do it. The method, the actual, this is this role and their script is this, is less important than getting everybody on the same page and feeling like I have the power to make a difference in this project and I have the power to talk to my own interests. And frankly, it takes people trusting each other to say, I know it's going to be painful, and just running. That answer? Perfect. Cool. Any other?
Do you use any technologies to support your processes?
Yeah, we use ThoughtWorks Mingle. It's a really very powerful kind of Scrum management tool. They have some built-in release management stuff too. I don't know, ThoughtWorksStudios.com I think is the address. So check that out.
Yeah, they have built-in burn downs and easy access for the support team, so it makes my life easy that I can submit a ticket, tell them what sprint it needs to go. I think it should go in, and then they can be managed and resort. So it helps immensely for managing multiple teams.
Any recommendations from the audience, just to open it up? From a technology standpoint for Scrum? No?
I have a Trello free.
I was just gonna say whatever works. Seriously, I mean,
Well, yeah,
I know I'm not trying to knock on the question, but if
Yeah.
it's technology, post-it notes, I mean, really, whatever works for your team is technology.
And
We actually do that as well at the beginning of the new project. We say to the team, okay, how do you want to manage this? How do you want to manage the work? Are we going to use just post-its on a wall? Are we going to use Mingle? Use Trello,
I
right?
use Trello because when I do support Scrum, the whole company uses Scrum, not just development. When we onboard and support people, we use Trello because it's free, it's easy, and it's really simple to get people into. If you're just implementing Scrum and you want to try it out with that mission, Trello's a good solution. Also, we had a methodology where we didn't burn down, we weighed post-it notes. So they did like 2.5 pounds of work or something over the skills tracker redesign. And it makes it, that's what they chose to do because it made them feel good and they could track how much did we do. What's up?
In some Scrum methodologies, you really want that business stakeholder to be always inside with the team, but you described your customers being distributed across the country, and you're sort of collecting requests and understanding feature refinements. So I'm curious to know how you did that. Like, was there someone who sort of was always a stand-in for the customer, or go-to person when you wanted to have that kind of customer stakeholder, kind of looking at screens and stuff? So that's really the question.
Yeah.
We have a go-to stakeholder that kind of represents he's one of the founders of the company. At the very beginning, you said we've got the tech guy and the guy who subject matter expert. Yeah. But we're not afraid to take real small chunks of any project and take a few hours in an afternoon and just make some phone calls and show people via a conference or something like that. Just small chunks of it and get input on from lots of different customers.
Great. And I came in like 2 minutes after you started, I think, but what happened to Eric, the guy who you couldn't deploy code without his cooperation? Was he ejected from the company, or?
He left the company after he got his new Scrum.
Oh, really?
He implemented Scrum. It started working, and he basically said, "My work here is done."
So he was a part of the solution as well as a part of the problem. Okay,
yeah, and I think I mentioned in there, I didn't say it all that. He's not a tyrant. He still comes to our land parties. This is not.
Okay, I got it.
The other thing with having stakeholders is that we employ a bunch of subject matter experts, a couple of paramedics, we're EMTs, we're training to more EMTs. So we can do some minor user testing in the building for really basic, does this address what needs to be done? But we flew to New Mexico a couple of weeks ago to say, you're a big hospital customer, and we really don't think that the people we've interviewed so far give us good information. How's your allied health department? Cool, we're gonna buy them lunch, have them get in office. And we had user testing from people whose eyes we never thought to get in front of to make sure that it made sense to people. It wasn't us speaking EMS to people who don't speak or want to speak it. Other questions?
I'm just getting into the agile space.
Yeah.
And our team will be working on other things too, so we're not 100% dedicated on this project. What's the best kind of strategy for you to focus on the calendar so many hours a week so that you're working at the same time, even if we're not in the same physical place, or you just have that stand-up meeting to know where the dependencies are? Or do you have any words of wisdom?
I would say that the stand-up meetings are your best friend. Stand-up meetings are really the most important thing, keeping a pulse on what's going on with each member of the team. We do the same thing. We've got three concurrent teams running at the same time, and there'll be people, 2 out of 3 teams, people that are members of just one of the team, and we have, if you're faithful to the stand-ups, everyone knows what's going on. The questions that you ask and the stand-ups are really to find out if they're robust.
I do want to say, I don't think we're a perfect company, obviously. We have had failures in hiring. We have had failures of employees that didn't fit, and that's almost always comes since we switched to people who didn't buy the flattened organization or the Scrum methodology. We lost, I think, 3 people because of that, and almost all of it can be moved down to they didn't fit on the team because they thought that they were above the team. Cool. Anything else? Yeah.
The roles that people play, can that change from sprint to sprint within a project, or from project to project?
I don't see any reason why it could change from sprint to sprint with that project. I have on the team that we're rebuilding a big chunk of the second biggest chunk of our division right now, and on the last sprint, I actually did some wireframing, design mock-ups, and then on the sprint that we're coming up on next, I'm just doing QA on the part that's already been done. So.
The roles product owner, scrum master, team member, you probably shouldn't oust your product owner or your scrum master. The idea is that the scrum master gets to be an advocate for the team, and the product owner has to be an advocate for the business decisions as well as the stakeholders involved, so that's the customers in our case. So those roles shouldn't be super fluid, but what they're responsible for, their deliverables that week, although we don't ever use the term anymore, what they're responsible for can't change. So while Mike as a product owner theoretically sets the pacing of the sprint at the beginning, if Rachel, who's our really gifted designer, really needs to have stuff in a specific order, she can give him enough feedback that she's basically just doing it. And so long as the team's cool with that, it's fine that there's not like this, she gave this info and Mike made the decision. She can just say, this is how it is, and the team says, okay. Cool. Well, if you guys have any questions about it, we're always happy to talk. I'm a dork about this stuff, so email me. Or I can give phone numbers or whatever. I don't know how Mike feels about getting emails and talking Scrum.
Email me.
I mean, I don't really care. I'll throw him under the bus. I've done it before. Thanks for coming out, guys. I really appreciate it.